you're quite famous. It's kind of an honor to talk to you. I mean, like,
thank you.
You know, I've talked to maybe 30 people so far on the podcast, and it's been really great because I think you've shown up in like 10 research papers or something like this. Do you know the number?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I think it's probably upwards of 7 or 8 that we've published through the group from the research project that I'm working on.
Wow. That's crazy. Oh, wait. I think I forgot this. Recording this. Okay. So upwards of 10.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Or sorry, upwards of 7, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
8,
yeah, and it seems like it's kind of a career making publications as well. Like people are very proud of it. You know, I don't know if it's in science or something like this. That's quite impressive, actually. So how long were you working on this? How long you had the spinal cord damage, and then what were the next steps after that?
So I had my spinal cord injury in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I was looking for as much rehabilitation as I could possibly get. At some point, the insurance companies kind of decide that you've made all the progress that someone with my diagnosis is going to make. So that led me to look for other avenues as far as what I can do for therapy. Led me to a Ohio State kind of research project that is funded by the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation called the Neuro Recovery Network. And they do body-weighted locomotor training. That was something that I was able to kind of squeeze my way into because they were trying to look at how that would affect someone with an ASIA B spinal cord injury. It's really focused on someone with the ASIA C or D spinal cord injury that has residual movement below their level of injury to retrain the body on how to walk again. But for me, I saw it as a great opportunity to get more and more physical therapy. Through that, I met one of the doctors who was enrolling for the study that I'm now involved with. So because of that, he knew that I was, very intrigued in looking for more and more opportunities. I kept asking him, "What's the future for someone with a spinal cord injury? What can I look forward to?" And then he also knew my medical history and knew that I kind of fit all the criteria of someone that they were looking for. So when it came time for them to enroll patients, he called me and asked me to come and just check out the muscle stimulation device that the team at Battelle had developed, and they were working with Ohio State to use on patients. That showed me a lot of promise in the functional electrode stimulation. And, that I knew that at some point, if I can control that system myself, that will really give me a lot of independence in my life. And that was just the next step of it, is to have a BlackRock Utah array implanted in my motor cortex to allow me to control that system naturally.
So you had partial control of your body, or is that what I'm understanding then?
So before I had the BlackRock array implanted, the FES system was all just controlled by someone sitting at a computer and turning it on and off manually. So I saw the kind of promise of what that technology could afford to someone like me and how much movement I would be able to regain. But then, that's not that practical to have someone else controlling your arm. You want to control it yourself.
Okay, interesting. So how long was this process of being able to train yourself to be able to move? I mean, so you do the remote FES, and then you eventually transferred over to this self-control, right?
Yeah. So we were doing that kind of remote FES just to really see if my muscles would respond to the muscle stimulation for probably about 4 or 5 months, and then it came down to, okay, do I want to consent to having a neural surgery to have the Utah array implanted? And once I kind of decided that that's something I wanted to do, we did a lot of testing with MRIs and cognitive testing, and to really get a good baseline and determine where they were going to place the array. And now I've had the array implanted for 3.5 years. And we're still getting single unit spikes and multi-unit spikes, and we're able to extract a lot of information out of that array that's been chronically implanted.
What was that decision like to have very intrusive brain surgery? I mean, did you just kind of decide like, hey, I'm going to do it?
It's a big ask, you know, because I think someone with a spinal cord injury and getting someone involved in research, it's a lot different than someone in, you know, say cancer research, where the doctor says, okay, well, you have 6 months to a year to live, and we have this option that's risky, but it could extend that. For me, it was, you know, I have a great life ahead of me, and we have this option that could improve it, but most likely you're not going to be able to take this system home. It could not work, and you have to have this neurosurgery in order to continue with it. So it was something that I really had to kind of process and make sure it's something I wanted to do. It was an easier decision for me because after meeting with everyone involved in the team, I felt very comfortable. The neurosurgeon that implanted my array routinely does a lot of DBS surgeries, so you know, it's kind of an oxymoron, but what he was doing to me was a simple brain surgery compared to what he does on a regular basis. So I felt very comfortable about that. And, you know, with the engineering team, I felt really comfortable in the fact that this would be a device that is going to be able to be used in everyday life within the next 10 years.
So it wasn't a question like, oh, I'm going to get permanent brain damage or, you know, something like this. It was more like, on the plus side, it works. On the minus side, the worst that can happen is it doesn't work, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, most of the risk were minimized, I think, just because I had a great neurosurgery team. There's certainly any risk involved in any surgery where it could be fatal just from the anesthesia. But, you know, I had also the risk of, you know, if they were to damage part of my motor cortex, that I have full residual movement, you know, in my shoulder, then I could be worse off than I was before I had the surgery, on top of it not working. So, you know, once we were able to implant the array, let everything heal, and then, you know, do that first day where we were able to collect some data from the array, it was awesome because it meant that we were in the right place. You know, everything was healthy, no infections, no complications during the surgery, and it was something that, you know, was going on the right path, and we just had to keep working and combining that with the FES system, and then combining to see, you know, how many movements can I do, and, you know, where can we push this system to its limits.
Interesting. So what was that like? I mean, what were you able to do the first day, and how long did it take to progress and get better at using it?
So the first time we were able to evoke movement was probably, I think it was about 6 weeks after the surgery date. And at that point, it was just a hand open. But, you know, that hand open just solidified that, hey, this theory works. You know, it's not a proof of concept anymore. This is something that does work, and now it's time to really get back to work. You know, I remember looking over to the engineers and the doctors in the room, you know, after that with just a huge smile on my face and really excited in the fact that I could open my hand. But, you know, just saying, okay, guys, now it's time to get to work, because now that the system is functional, I want to be able to take it home and really improve my quality of life.
And so you can move your arms, right? And you can't grip, or what are your movements?
Yeah, so I have a C5 spinal cord injury, and it's mostly just paralysis from the elbow down. So I can move my arm around decently well just from residual shoulder movement and a lot of bicep strength, but I can't move my wrist or any of my fingers individually, or even together at all. So when I have the system, I can, you know, take the shoulder movement that I have, the pronation and supination that I have that's a little weak, and combine that with the muscle stimulation and, you know, flex individual fingers, flex a group of fingers to really get, you know, a nice strong grip around an object, to lift that object up and move it across the table. So it really opens up a lot of doors for me as far as what I will be able to do when I can take this system home.
Interesting. And so, I mean, what kind of grip would you be able to pick up a water bottle or something, or what would be maybe the maximum?
Yeah, so we've done a bunch of different standardized tests that kind of help benchmark us against me doing the same test without using the system versus using the system, which is nice. And then also comparing to some other neuroprosthetic devices, whether that be a robotic arm or fully implanted electrodes and things like that, so that we can kind of benchmark our speeds. I've been able to do a bunch of different grips outside of those kind of standardized tests where I can reach out and pick up a bottle. I can pick up a telephone and bring it up to my ear. I can pick up a toothbrush. We've done a lot of stuff where we'll start on just picking up a peg and doing kind of a lateral pinch with the thumb and the side of the index finger. And that really translates to a lot of kind of everyday objects, whether that be a key or holding onto a credit card or holding onto that toothbrush. And, if we can get more and more kind of generalized grips that translate to a lot of everyday objects, that's great.
Interesting. Yeah, and you were able to do different strengths of grips too. And you played a game also, didn't you?
Yeah, so one of the more exciting things than doing a lot of those standardized tests was the fact that we played a version of Guitar Hero. And, that was great because, it was more fun in some of the sessions. I think it really helped keep me intrigued and, keep me focused. But it also really showcases the system because you can have individual finger control, and also the response time is quick enough to be able to continue playing the game. And that was great that we were able to have that individual finger control and flexion and extension to be able to push the buttons on the guitar.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And so you're training it as you're doing it? I mean, does it get better with time?
Yeah, it's certainly gotten easier and easier over time. I really equate your brain to any muscle in your body. There's a lot of neuroplasticity that's going on. So with the sense that it was kind of dormant for about 3.5 years after my spinal cord injury, and then I had to relearn how to speak that language of the brain and really block everything else out and focus on, just opening or just closing my hand. That took a lot of concentration and a lot of mental focus. I would leave a session and be extremely fatigued because I had just been there for 2.5, 3 hours thinking about just a few finite movements.
Telekinesis.
Exactly. It's understanding that language that your brain's speaking, and no one really knows what the direct translation is. But we've been working more and more, and some of those things that I did really early on, as far as just opening and closing the hand, now have become more of a second nature, and I don't have to concentrate as hard. If I want to combine that with other movements, I can do that, and it's not as complicated as it once was. So it's getting easier and easier, and the team is also working on making the algorithm better and better. You mentioned that you spoke to David Friedenberg, who's on our machine learning algorithm team, and he's doing a lot of work with his team to make it so we don't have to retrain those decoders all the time, and it's easier and quicker from turning the system on until I have full control of it.
So what does that look like? I mean, you're just thinking I'll move this, and then are you are they watching the computer and be like, oh, whatever that was, do that again? And so, I mean, because obviously it won't be it won't necessarily be wired into the same areas that grip the hand or anything like this. So it could be you're thinking about Pikachu or something like this, Pokemon, and that opens your hand for some reason, or something maybe. I mean, it would be in the motor cortex, so it would be maybe related with movement. So actually you would think about moving your leg, but that moves your hand or something like this. Or what was this process like?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really, like I said, that kind of language for the brain and understanding that. In order for me to learn that, we did a lot where I would have my arm down on the table, and a researcher would come and put their arm down right next to mine and, do the movement that we were working on. And I would just, think about it the same way, and really it helps fire some of those mirror neurons in your brain, because then it's more natural, and I don't have to, try to remember what those translations are of, thinking Pikachu and my hand opens. I can just think hand open and my hand opens. And then, when we're getting into some grips, instead of thinking about, okay, for this bottle grip, I want to flex my thumb, my index ring, middle, and pinky, all at kind of varying strengths. Well, no, I can just think of, okay, I'm going to pick up a bottle, and I can reach out, pick it up, and move it around.
Interesting. And so now you don't think about it or anything like this. It's kind of like second nature. And did that help also, the mirror neuron stuff?
Yeah, it certainly made it easier and easier to kind of learn a new task. I don't have to focus as hard on it, which is great, because now I can, kind of be doing other things as well. It doesn't make sense to take something home if, in order for you to hold on to something, you have to be thinking actively about that and only that at one time. Pikachu. Exactly. And, that doesn't make sense if you are just reaching out to get a drink. You need to think, okay, well, now what am I drinking? Okay, is it cold enough? And there's other things that you're going to be focusing on. So you got to reduce that mental load, so that way you're just thinking about grabbing the drink and picking it up, and it's much easier and more natural for you to use.
And so how long have you been doing it? Like how many months or how many sessions and how many hours per session?
I'd have to do some quick math. But we've been, I've had the implant now 3.5 years, and we've been doing about 2 or 3 sessions a week. And each session is usually about 3.5 hours.
So 150 times 3, 450, 500, something like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, quite a bit of time that we've been working on it, and, it's getting easier and easier to use, and I'm really happy with some of the progress, but at the same time, I can't wait to take the system out of the lab and use it, in a home setting where I think I can really find out what it's lacking and come back to the team and say, okay, these are the big things that we need to change. Now that we'll have much more data if I can use it, 8 hours in a day versus just in a 3-hour session.
And you haven't done that yet? Taken it home?
No, not yet. It's still only in the lab.
Okay. Why is that?
It's mainly reducing the size, and then there's also just some other hurdles as far as the bulky equipment, the retraining that we have to do. Right now, it would kind of need an engineer to run the system in between the times that I'm using it. And then also getting FDA clearance to make sure it's something that's safe to be able to use outside of the lab.
Okay. And I'm wondering if you did use it like at home or something like this, if you would have to retrain, because you have to retrain every single time, right? Would you? If it's just always on, would the brain get fatigued, or would it like get overloaded or something like this, saturated, or would it, would that relearning period not be there anymore?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because the decoding algorithms, are getting better and better. So it's less and less training time that we need, which is very beneficial, because if you have to stop and retrain all the time, that's not practical. Also, I think, if you're using it for 8 hours a day, your brain is really going to start to adapt more and more. There's been times already where, if they lock the decoder and keep it fixed on a certain algorithm set, and things change in my neural activity, I can adapt to that myself. But then sometimes the computer is fighting me, and it's trying to adapt, and I'm trying to adapt. So it's really getting on that same page that helps make it better and better to use. But you have to think as far as practicality. If it's something that you are taking home, you need to make it as easy as possible to use, so that way the patient will want to use it.
Plug and play. Do you think you've unlocked do you think you've made it easier for those people coming after you?
I certainly think so. That was a huge motivating factor for me to be involved in the research is, I had a good opportunity in the sense that I could be a part of this, but even if it wasn't successful, would still be some great things that would be able to come out of the study, and a lot of things to learn from failure. But we've had success, so that's even better. So I think, by the time it goes to the next patient, it's going to be a easier system to use. It's going to be, a lot quicker for them to get up and running, so to speak. And that's exactly what I want to do.
Cool. So if you had to guess, how much did you cut the learning time, the learning curve?
Oh, that's a tough question because it does vary person to person as far as, how much mental focus and everything like that. But I think, because of everything we've learned in the last 3.5 years, it will take someone, to do something that I did in maybe 6 months. They could probably figure out how to do it in 2 months, or maybe even less. It really just depends on how quickly everything is going to training wise. And, we've learned a lot in the 3.5 years, and taking that and applying it to all the future research is something that will be extremely beneficial.
Okay. Do you mind if we do a video of show the
certainly.
implant? So, for those of us listening on the podcast, how would you describe it? It's kind of
so the actual pedestal that's connected to my skull 24/7. I kind of described it as a stack of nickels. It's a stack of a few coins that just protrudes from my skull, and it's got a protective cap over it. They're able to then remove that cap and expose the connections to interface into the neural system processor to translate those electric spikes from my brain into ones and zeros that the computer can understand.
Okay. And how is it like in terms of knocking stuff? Like if you're listening to like a really good rock song and you're like banging your head, then does that cause problems?
I haven't noticed a whole lot. It was something that took me a while to get used to, having something in the skull, and also after having the neurosurgery, the whole site was extremely sore. But within the span of about 6 weeks, it healed up really well, and it got to the point where now when I'm living with it, if I'm getting dressed and getting a shirt over my head and it kind of snags on it, I don't really feel it. Besides the fact that my shirt isn't smoothly coming across my head. In the beginning, if it snagged on my shirt, that would be like, oh wow, that really hurts and kind of gives me a little headache, which makes sense because I just had neurosurgery. But it's something that's been a lot easier to live with than I thought it was going to be, which I'm very happy about because that was a little reservation for joining the study. I mean, it's not like I just go into the lab and get hooked up to some equipment and then they disconnect me completely and I go home and I'm still the same person. There's been a big change now that I actually have this implant that I live with 24/7, and it protrudes from my skull.
And could you have it removed at some point too?
Yeah, it's scheduled to be removed at the end of the study. We were originally only supposed to have clearance to keep the array in for 1 year, and that was mainly just because the feasibility of all of the other studies in the past to, how long are these arrays safe in a human body was really minimal. So the FDA gave us clearance for 1 year, and we've gone back to them a few times to get extensions. And I think we're going to continue with getting extensions because everything's still working fine. I've, really had that big investment already of having the surgery. I think, as long as we're still getting really good signals, I'll continue with the study as long as possible.
Interesting. And so there hasn't been any decline so far?
So we've noticed a little bit of decrease in our signals, but it really has plateaued off to staying very stable to the point where we can still pick up a bunch of spikes. the data set that we use is more of it doesn't look at individual spikes. It looks at a mean wavelet power of the spikes. So that's even better for the sense in the future if we do lose even more and more individual spikes that we're able to pick up. But it stayed very stable the past 2 years or so.
Okay. Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, because I always understood that, the body's rejection of this was a huge problem, and they were basically useless after 6 weeks or something like this. But do you know if you've done anything different that it has been valid for so long?
So I think a lot of it is having really good care of the surgical site. Your body
so you don't put on your shirts too often.
Exactly. I try not to get my shirt snagged on it all the time. The body is certainly going to reject any foreign object in it. And we've noticed a little bit of that where some of the edgy electrodes aren't picking up as much signal as they once were. But, a lot of the research that had been done to determine how long these are safe was mostly in primate studies. And I think it's kind of interesting and comical to some degree that there was a researcher that came out and really hypothesized, and this was after I had my implant, but hypothesized that, I really think the reason why these arrays are failing in primates is it's mostly mechanical trauma. And it's because you can't sit a monkey down and say, hey, you have a neuro implant, try not to bang it around on things. They don't understand what's going on. And I do. So, I try to be extremely careful with it.
You're flinging your poop around less.
Exactly. I'm not hitting my head on the side of my cage and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really being a little bit more safe with it. And I think that has really helped with some of the success of the longevity of the implant chronically. Okay.
Interesting. So probably everybody else could have similar cases. Do you know if there's anybody else similar to your doing a similar study?
I know there are a handful of individuals with the Utah array implanted currently that have had them for a while. I don't know exactly the time frames off the top of my head, but I really hope that it's something that they can keep as long as possible and still retain good signal strength, because then that's going to have more and more positive feedback for future research.
Okay. So is this something you would recommend to other people, or tell other people in your situation?
I think so. I mean, it's certainly a big ask to have someone, do you want to have neurosurgery for something that you don't need and it's most likely not going to benefit your life? But for me, I saw it as a great opportunity to help advance the field of neuroscience and really advance the field of spinal cord injury research so people like me can become more independent. And it's that little independence of regaining use of your hand that would be life-changing for me. So, if I can have any sense of, more independence, that'll improve my quality of life and decrease my burden on my caregivers and my family of asking them to help me just do very simple things that I think most people take for granted. I certainly took for granted before I had my spinal cord injury.
Could you please play Guitar Hero for me?
Yeah, exactly. And also it's just the sense that, research isn't going anywhere unless you have individuals that are willing to take something and that might be seemed as risky. Mm-hmm. But, like I kind of mentioned earlier, I was very comfortable with my neurosurgery team, and I don't really think it was that big of a risk. It's and looking back on it, everything's been very safe, and it's been a great experience.
So are you close to getting a PhD now? Or are you very knowledgeable in this field, as correcting the researchers?
I've gotten a great crash course in neuroscience and statistics and machine learning and computer programming and everything like that. It's been great because I've been able to, I think, become more of a team member versus just a participant, and really a partner in the research, because I think it's crucial to have that feedback from the subjects, and that's what really sets aside human research from animal research, is you can get that feedback from someone and really help drive the direction of the study to be the most beneficial to patients. And if I can have any insight on that as possible, I'll share everything I can tell the researchers to make it better and better for someone like me.
Very cool. Very cool. Is there anything else that you want to talk about that we didn't cover?
I can't think of anything right now. I really think that if I had to say one thing, it's just that there's some great research going on, and people have to acknowledge that and understand that there's no reason to settle with the current standards of care. You need to be able to keep pushing the envelope and doing more and more. And this, I don't think what I'm working on is the best system for someone with a spinal cord injury, but it's a system to increase the independence, and having more and more options will really help everyone in the long run.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you. This has been amazing.
Yeah, thank you very much.